Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why and how of newspaper reading. Now we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 21st of May 2019, and the news that would be covered today is given on the screen and the timestamp for the same is given in the description and the comment section given below. And so now with this, let us start with the first article. Now we have taken this opinion-based editorial from the editorial page on page 10. Now this editorial talks about a recent resolution which has been put forward by the European Union and Bangladesh. Now this resolution has been put forward in the United Nations Human Rights Council or the UNHRC. Now the main focus of this resolution is that it highlights the various human rights violations that have been committed against the Rohingya population within Myanmar. Now, apart from this resolution asks for a full inquiry by the United Nations Human Rights Council and the International Criminal Court against the human rights violations against the Rohingyas within Myanmar. Now, what has happened is that India remained absent when the voting on this resolution happened in the United Nations Human Rights Council. Now, the first reason given by India is that the resolution would be counterproductive, whereby according to India, the United Nations Human Rights Council should not force upon its own recommendations upon the Myanmar government. Now, apart from this, what you also need to know is that Myanmar and India are not signatories or participants within the International Criminal Court. And therefore, India is against any interventions by the International Criminal Courts in any country which is not a signatory or a member of the International Criminal Court. So now hopefully up till here you've understood the first focus of this editorial, whereby the European Union and Bangladesh moved a resolution within the United Nations Human Rights Council which expressed concerns over the human rights violations against the Rohingya community within Myanmar, whereby this resolution asked for an inquiry by the United Nations Human Rights Council and also by the International Criminal Court. However, what has happened is that India remained absent with regards to voting on this resolution. And the first reason given by India for remaining absent is that it would be counterproductive to force the UNHRC recommendations upon Myanmar. And secondly, India is also opposed to any interventions by the international criminal courts within non-members country, whereby you have to understand that India and Myanmar are not members of the International Criminal Court, and therefore India does not support any interventions by the International Criminal Court in non-member countries. Now, it is within that regard that the author has said that India is lacking in measures to ensure a stop of human rights violations by the Tatmadaw within Myanmar. Now, Tatmadaw is the official name of the Myanmar Armed Forces. Now, Tatmadaw used to be the military dictator of Myanmar, and it was only recently in 2015 that a democratic transition happened within Myanmar. However, even till now, Tatmadaw has considerable political and economic influence within the politics of Myanmar. And it has been said that it was the Tatmadaw or the Myanmar Armed Forces which were responsible for the human rights violations against the Rohingya community within Myanmar, and also for forcing out the Rohingya community from the Rakhine state of Myanmar. Now, the author has highlighted several reasons as to why India is lacking in measures to stop the Tatmadaw. Now, the first reason given by the author is that India is emphasizing on economic development of the Rakhine state within Myanmar and also the economic development of the Rohingya community. Now, apart from this, India is also aiding Bangladesh within the management of the Rohingya refugees. However, India is not emphasizing on political change within Myanmar, whereby according to the author, India is not pushing Myanmar for ensuring the political rights of the Rohingya community within the Rakhine state. Apart from this, what also has happened is that India is currently laying stress on internal inquiries with regards to human rights violations committed by Tatmadaw against the Rohingya community, whereby India has said that there should be internal inquiries which are conducted by the Myanmar government themselves. And it is within that regard that the author has said that India is not pushing or supporting international mechanisms of inquiries of human rights violations against the Rohingya community by Tatmadaw. The third reason given by the author is that India continues to maintain ties with Tatmadaw by supplying them with combat hardware, engaging in military exercises, and also imparting the Tatmadaw with UN peacekeeping training. Now, one of the main reasons as to why India maintains close ties with the Tatmadaw. Now, the first reason is that India intends to modernize the Tatmadaw with the intent of securing the Indo-Myanmar border. And apart from this, by maintaining close ties with the Tatmadaw, it ensures that the Tatmadaw is cooperative in securing the Indo-Myanmar border. Apart from this, the second reason is that if India does not provide the arms exports or engages in military exercises with the Tatmadaw, then China would. And therefore, what would happen is Tatmadaw and Myanmar would completely fall into the Chinese circle. Now, it is within that regard that the author is saying that because India wants to maintain close ties with the Tatmadaw so as to secure its border and balance China, it is not able to criticize the Tatmadaw with regards to its human rights violations against the Rohingya community. Now, the fourth and the last point which has been raised by the author is that Bangladesh is currently hosting the world's largest refugee camp of Rohingya refugees within the region of Cox's Bazar. Now, because of this support of India to the Tatmadaw and its unwillingness to criticize the Tatmadaw for its human rights violations against the Rohingya refugees, it has negatively impacted India-Bangladesh ties. Now, these are the main 4 points that have been raised by the author as to why India is not pressurizing the Tatmadaw, which is the Myanmar Armed Forces, for being held accountable for its human rights violations against the Rohingya community within the Rakhine state of Myanmar. Now, this article and the explanation given in this section should be seen from the perspective of GS Paper 2 within the section International Relations. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 9. Now what this article talks about is a marriage between a man and a trans woman is going to be made official. And this has been possible because of a recent judgment of the Madras High Court. Now what we need to understand from this article is about the High Court judgment. Now what had happened is that in the Arun Kumar and Shrija case, the Madurai bench of the Madras High Court has extended the enjoyment of civil rights, especially those pertaining to marriage, to trans people. Whereby the Madras High Court has said that a marriage between a male and a trans woman would be valid under the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955. Therefore, what this means is that any man or a woman who marries a trans woman or a trans man, their marriage then has to be registered by the Registrar of Marriage. Now, apart from this, the Madras High Court has said that the expression bride, which occurs in the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955, does not have a static meaning. Now, the Madras High Court had quoted the judgment of the Nasser vs. Union of India case of 2014, whereby in this judgment it was held that transgender persons have the right to decide their self-identified gender. Now, in simplest of terms, what this means is that let's say there is a particular man who has now become a transgender and therefore identifies himself as a woman. Now, because in the NASA case of 2014, it has been held that transgenders have a right for self-identified gender, meaning that a transgender person who might have been born as male is now identifying himself as a woman. Then according to the Madras High Court, this person can identify themselves as a bride under the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955. Whereby according to the Madras High Court, the definition of the term bride within the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955 is not static. Whereby the term bride does not mean a person who has been born as a woman. Whereby it can also mean a transgender person who identify themselves as being a woman. And therefore what this means is that the Madras High Court judgment has revised the legal construction of gender and the conventional interpretation that is usually given to terms such as bride or bridegroom. Now, the fourth and the last point that you need to know is that the impact of the Madras High Court judgment is yet to be seen on how it would impact the rights to companionship of the lesbian and the gay community. Now, the Supreme Court in the Navtej Singh Johar case had said that the LGBT community has a basic right to companionship. Now, it was in the Navtej Singh Johar case that Section 377 of the IPC was decriminalized, whereby the sexual act between homosexuals was criminalized under Section 377. And the Supreme Court in the Navtej Singh Johar case had said that LGBT community have the right to companionship, and therefore the imposition of this Section 377 is not constitutional. However, after the judgment of the Madras High Court in the Arun Kumar and Shrija case, it is yet to be seen as to whether the right to companionship in the form of marriage would be extended to the lesbian and gay community. So now hopefully you've understood the basic points of the judgment of the Madras High Court in the Arun Kumar and Shrija case of 2019. Now this article and the explanation given in this section should first be seen from the perspective of GS Paper 1 within the section Society and within the subsection Social Empowerment. And apart from this, it should also be seen from the perspective of GS Paper 2 within the section Social Justice. and within the subsection, mechanisms constituted for the protection and betterment of vulnerable section, whereby in both of these sections, it talks about the social empowerment of the transgender community, and similarly the protection and betterment of the transgender as vulnerable sections. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 7. Now the focus of this article is quite small. Now the first thing that you need to know to understand this article is what is cloud storage. Now some of you might be using cloud storage, where an example of cloud storage is Google Drive. Now let's say you have created an MS Word file or an Excel file or a PPT. Now generally these files would be saved on your laptop or your computer. However, under cloud computing, you are able to save this file in your Google Drive. And therefore what happens under cloud storage such as Google Drive, that you are able to store your data in a server which is in another location. And you're able to access this MS Word file or the PPT or your Excel file through the use of the internet. So in simplest of terms, you and me are able to send our files to a data server which is maintained in another location, whereby we are able to save these files in another data server rather than in the hard drives of our computers or our laptops. So now hopefully you've gotten a basic understanding as to what is cloud storage. Now what has happened is that the Maharashtra government has become the first state within India to unveil a public cloud policy, whereby under this public cloud policy, the departments of the Maharashtra government have to shift their data onto various cloud services, whereby the departments of the government of Maharashtra would be uploading their data on the servers of Microsoft, Amazon, and other 3 companies. Now this public cloud policy of the Maharashtra government is also in compliance with the National Data Sharing and Accessibility Policy that was passed by the Union government in 2012. Now the main advantage of this public cloud policy of Maharashtra is that it would accelerate the adoption of e-governance and also promote transparency and accountability of the Maharashtra government. Now what this would do is that all of the data of the departments of the government of Maharashtra would be uploaded on cloud services, and therefore it improves the ability of the Maharashtra government to release this data to the general public. And through this, it would promote transparency and accountability of the various departments of the government of Maharashtra. Now these are the 2 main things that you needed to understand from this article, and you should understand them from the perspective of GS paper 2 within the section governance, and within the subsection important aspects of governance, transparency and accountability, and transparency and accountability related to e-governance. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 1. Now the first thing that you need to understand about this article is that in June of 2018, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, or the OHCHR, gave out its first report on Jammu and Kashmir, whereby this report was titled Situation of Human Rights within Kashmir, whereby this report of the OHCHR blamed India for human rights violation within Kashmir and not undertaking proper protection of human rights of the Kashmiri people. However, what happened soon afterward is that India rejected this report, whereby India has said that the High Commissioner of Human Rights who had brought out this report was biased against India. Apart from this, India also said that this report lacked in proper research methods, whereby the individuals who had prepared this report did not even visit Kashmir. Apart from this, they also did not talk to the government of Jammu and Kashmir and the local individuals within Jammu and Kashmir. However, it also needs to be understood that one of the reasons as to why they were not able to prepare for ground research is that India also did not give the permission to the OSCHR to visit Jammu and Kashmir. Apart from this, India also said that this report highlighted a specific perspective of the Kashmiri separatists and of Pakistan. However, what has happened now, as today's article has highlighted, that 3 special rapporteurs of the United Nations Human Rights Council have written to India asking for details on the steps taken by India to punish and provide justice to victims who they have alleged faced torture and arbitrary killing by the Indian forces in Jammu and Kashmir from 1990 onwards. Now, as you already understand that India had rejected the earlier report of the OSCHR with regards to the situation of human rights in Kashmir. And similarly, India has said that it is not going to engage with the 3 special rapporteurs who have raised questions with regards to India's human rights conditions within Jammu and Kashmir. So now hopefully up till here you've understood as to what this article talks about. Now apart from this, what you also need to understand is who are these special rapporteurs of the United Nations Human Rights Council. Now, these special rapporteurs are independent human rights experts who have been appointed by the United Nations Human Rights Council. Now, the mandate of these special rapporteurs is to monitor, advise, and publicly report on human rights situations within specific countries and also on human rights violations based on thematic mandates. Now, these mandates for the special rapporteurs are outlined in specific UN resolutions which have been passed by the United Nations General Assembly. So, let's say the United Nations General Assembly has passed a resolution with regards to human rights violations within Yemen. Now, based on this UN resolution on human rights violation in Yemen, the United Nations Human Rights Council will appoint a special rapporteur. And this special rapporteur would then monitor, advise, and publicly report on human rights situation within the country of Yemen. Apart from this, various UN resolutions have been passed by the United Nations General Assembly with regards to thematic mandates. So let's say, for an example, a resolution has been passed by the United Nations General Assembly with regards to preventing torture. Now, based on this resolution against torture that has been passed by the UN General Assembly, the United Nations Human Rights Council may appoint a special rapporteur who would monitor, advise, and publicly report on human rights violations caused by torture. Therefore, hopefully you understand that a resolution passed by the United Nations General Assembly with regards to human rights can be used by the United Nations Human Rights Council to form a special rapporteur that could either focus on a specific country which has been mentioned within the UN resolution passed by the United Nations General Assembly, or on a particular theme which has been mentioned within the United Nations resolution passed by the United Nations General Assembly. Now, you need to understand that the OHCHR provides the special rapporteurs with assistance with regards to personnel and logistics. But these special rapporteurs serve within their personal capacity and do not receive any form of salary by the United Nations. And therefore, you need to understand that these special rapporteurs are independent of the United Nations Human Rights Council and from the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, whereby they might be appointed by the United Nations Human Rights Council and might be provided with assistance by the OHCHR. But these special rapporteurs work within an independent format. Now, the reports which have been made by these special rapporteurs would be submitted to the United Nations Human Rights Council. So now hopefully up till here you understood as to what is a special rapporteur. Now, it is within that regard that three special rapporteurs of the United Nations Human Rights Council that work upon three special themes such as extrajudicial killings, torture, and right of humans towards mental health. However, as you already understand, that India has said that it is not going to engage with these special rapporteurs. So now hopefully you've also understood as to what is a special rapporteur and how it is linked to the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights and to the United Nations Human Rights Council. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now, we have taken this article from page 9. Now, as you already might be aware of, various standard units such as kilogram, Kelvin, mole, candela, among others, had their change in definition, whereby they are no longer defined by physical objects. Now, this change in definition of various standard units was covered comprehensively by Basavasar in the Daily News Simplified video of 17th of November. Now, the link to this TNS video is given in the description section given below, whereby you can refer to this video to understand the various changes that have been made with regards to definition of SI units. Therefore, what we're going to do in today's section is again revise this through questions for practice. Now, there are two questions for your practice, and what you need to do is pause this video, solve both of these questions, and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now, the correct answer to question number 1 is C, 2 and 3. Now, the SI unit meter is not based on the speed of sound, but is rather based on the speed of light. The SI unit kilogram is based on the Planck constant, and similarly, the measurement of second is based on the radiation of cesium-133, whereby cesium-133 is also used in atomic clocks. Whereas Kelvin is the SI unit for the measurement of temperature and is calculated based upon the Boltzmann constant. Now, with regards to question number 2, the correct answer is C, both 1 and 2. Now, the International Bureau of Weights and Measures is the international body which has been formed under the Metric Convention and is located within the country of France, which has recently changed the definition of various SI units, including kilogram. Now, the National Meteorology Institute of India is the National Physical Laboratory, whereby the National Physical Laboratory is responsible for realizing the units of physical measurements within India which are based on the international system, whereby the National Physical Laboratory is India's agency represented at the International Bureau of Weights and Measures. And therefore both statement number 1 and statement number 2 are correct. Now there are 2 more questions for your practice, and as you already understand, pause this video, solve both of these questions and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now the correct answer to question number 3 is A, whereby the military exercise which is conducted between India and the military force of Myanmar, which is the Tatmadaw, is called IMBEX, whereby the Surya Karan military exercise is conducted between the armies of India and of Nepal, while the equivalent military exercise is conducted between India and Maldives, while the Mitra Shakti military exercise is conducted between India and Sri Lanka. Now with regards to question number 4, the correct answer is D, 1, 2 and 3, whereby the UN Special Rapporteurs are appointed by the UN Human Rights Council. Apart from this, India is a member of the United Nations Human Rights Council. Now the United Nations Human Rights Council is a 47 members body. Now India was recently elected to the United Nations Human Rights Council in 2018, whereby India had received the highest votes within the Asia Pacific category. While with regards to statement number 3, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights does serve as the Secretariat of the UN Human Rights Council. However, you have to understand that the OCHR and the UNHRC are 2 distinct bodies of the United Nations, whereby both of these organizations are sister organizations within the United Nations and work closely with each other. And now with this, we come to an end in the analysis of today's newspaper. Now we move on to the question for today.